Hi there again. It's Grzegorz from the Artistry of Code podcast. Welcome to the 11th episode of our main series. This time, me, Artur, and Marek met up to talk about one of the interesting aspects of recruiting programmers, which is doing the live codings during the job interviews. Now, we found this conversation very interesting and mind-shifting, and I think you will enjoy this episode the same as we did while recording it. Enjoy! Welcome to the Artistry of Code podcast, where we, together with our guests, are seeking ways of doing things right and having fun with it.
Software, architecture, soft skills, teamwork, and other crazy buzzwords.
Are you ready? Let's bring more value to the business.
Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Artistry of Code podcast. I have Marek and Artur with me. Say hi guys.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
Hey, so today we wanted to take a small break after the last two episodes, which were very, very intense when it comes to the meat part of the knowledge. And we wanted to talk about something lightweight, but we'll see if that's really lightweight. So for today, we're going to focus on an aspect of IT recruitment, which is the live coding. We're going to share some of our experiences and opinions, so let's see how that's going to develop. But before we start, let's start with the usual part, which is the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to call out Marek to go first.
As usual. The biggest and the most important change in my life in the last 2 weeks is something which you wouldn't expect probably, and that's it. This is the thing which is called espresso machine. So for many years I was relying on the standard coffee maker, like the, how you call that normal one, not the pressure one, let's say. But since few days I finally can have proper doppio at home, which is just lovely, and that's why I'm so energized today. And I hope to have a great episode today. And also, during the recording of the last intro for the last episode, I discovered that I can use my LED bars, which I've used to light up my desk, to light up my face. So it can improve a bit the quality of the video. Artur, what about you?
My last 2 weeks, I wanted to show you something that I received from the post office. I don't know, guys, if you recognize.
We do. You need to describe what it is now.
It's the, let's call it business run, but I don't know if business run is probably the trademark. So it's like bieg firmowy. It's the very similar action. So we are running 5 kilometers. And all the cash earned from this run is given to charity. So I'm looking forward to the Saturday when the run is going to happen. I've heard that in Wrocław on Olympic Stadium there's gonna be some event for attenders, and I am thinking highly about participating there, just to feel that vibe, not only to take take my running shoes and go somewhere, run over the park. So yeah, this is something that I'm right now focused on, especially that I have some nasty lower back pains recently. Yeah, the age is kicking me right now. But hopefully I still have few days to recover. And Grzegorz, do you also are participating? I remember that previously, in previous years, you were always taking part, and I would say in the first row, and the first on the line.
Yeah, so I'm running in the company runs for quite a time now. There might be already, I don't know, like 2 years in which I didn't participate for some reason, and this year I'm also participating. But the fun part is that it's always at the time when we are on vacation at the seaside. So actually, the day of the run is precisely the day when we are traveling. So I'm either going to run in the very morning before the car ride to the seaside or just after. I guess I'm going to do it in the morning because this has a hybrid formula so that you can run all together with everybody on the Olympic Stadium here in Wrocław, or you can use an app and then do the run somewhere else, and that's going to count as well. So with this, I actually already exposed my part of the last 2 weeks because we're going to go to vacation this weekend for 2 weeks at the seaside. So I would say that's pretty much dominating my private part of the life because we need to sort everything out before we leave for the 2 weeks. But I'm going to take the running shoes. I'm not sure about the bike because the weather at the Polish Sea is very, I would say, surprising and random. So I would hate looking at the bike standing there and not having the possibility to ride on it. But when it comes to the professional part of the last 2 weeks, I had the chance to go for a second time through a technical leadership training. That was like a 3-day training with workshops, with actual situations with other leaders at Fisman. And I really enjoyed that training. I had this in a previous company a couple of years ago. So I've recommended the trainer for Fisman. Now the training was organized, and I'm like super hyped after those 3 days of just working out on the leadership skill set. So pretty much energized and head full of ideas what can be done in future when it comes to like serving such a role. So these are my last 2 weeks. So I guess that at this stage we can slowly get to the main subject of today's episode. So let's start with sharing with our listeners our experiences with live coding in job interviews in the past. So if we had those live codings, how did they look like, and how do we felt about this? Since Marek, you've brought the subject 2 episodes ago, and I felt that you'd be the best person to start this conversation. So, how about you? Did you had live coding experience? How was it looking like, and what do you think about that from time perspective?
I had live coding few times in the past. I can remember both good experiences and also pretty bad experiences. I would say that the worst ones are from the far past, probably because during the live coding I was like getting the crazy nervous because I didn't feel like super comfortable with coding in front of someone, even if it was a remote interview, even at that point. But I also had some live coding experience in some more recent time, let's say, and it was different, and I would say it was better than previously, and I also like changed my mind in the meantime in terms of my opinion on the live coding. And while I can see that it can be stressful for the candidate, which I was also on this side at sometimes, but it's also like time saving solution compared to the take home tasks, which I honestly completely don't like, let's say, use soft words here, and I'm really not fan of that. So if I would have to choose at some point, I would choose live coding over the task.
So the experience that you had, and please tell us how did this look like physically? So how that was organized.
It didn't look physically at all because it was all done on the in the digital world. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. It was organized in different ways, but usually I had like I would say I had 3 different experiences. So the one way which I was interviewed was like a crazy walkthrough JS ES6 specification features. So the interviewer at that point was like asking multiple times about multiple different features which came in ES6 or following specifications of the language in JavaScript. And that was like pretty boring, and that was most stressful probably because you not always know like all specifics of the new features if you didn't have to use all of them, even if you read about new stuff. The second one was like about more algorithmic exercise, which was interesting, wasn't super fun, and it not always gives the data points, in my opinion, which are related to the job later on. But also I had experience like getting some problem which is somehow related to the company, and I had to like quickly write the beginning, let's say, of the new service or new application, and go through that challenge with the interviewer or interviewers.
Okay, and how about you, Artur? Did you have the live coding experience in the past? How did it look like, and how do you feel about this from time perspective?
Yeah, so I had at least two, or two I remember well. Yeah, they were a little bit different. First of all, was also like you said, more algorithmic. So I had some. Let's say if you hear that task, it sounded like an easy one, but during the implementation, it happened to be more complicated. So it was like a kind of a possible pitfall, and the recruiter wanted to see probably if I will catch that pitfall and go around it, solve the upcoming issue or not. It was, I would say, a little bit stressful, especially especially because I didn't expect it. I mean, nobody said, on this interview we would like you to do the live coding. It was like just we started, we were talking, and at some point he asked me, hey, could you maybe share your screen and we will try to write some code. I have something to ask you. And it was unpleasant because I wasn't prepared. Yeah, and this is something that, okay, so now I need to figure out where to run it, if it should be IDE or maybe some like online playgrounds, like for TypeScript, etc. It comes with some pros and cons. Yeah, in IDE maybe I need to first close all these projects that I had opened, and I don't want to expose it, even for a moment, for others. Create the project if it's TypeScript, initiate it once again. So the organization, the fact that I need to organize it on my own is increasing the pressure because somebody on the other side is waiting when he will start. Yeah? The second one was expected, so I was told before, and it was totally different because I got the more business related, I would say, like a real life problem to do some action over some imaginary entity. And the difference is that there was no catch. Yeah, there was no catch in the implementation, and they just wanted me to show, or at least I see it this way, what is my approach and what I will start with. Yeah, so I created almost true code, almost in the shape that might end as a pull request, but of course in a very simplified domain. And it was more comfortable for me because it's the way I work anyways. Yeah, so it was easier to start, easier to figure out what to start with. It and the constant conversation about my motives, why I am doing here, was also helpful. Yeah, when you have like a simple task with the speedfall, then it's I would say easier to focus on it, not talk, like close inside and in thinking, overthinking sometimes. Yeah, so it, in my opinion, it can be a good experience when it's expected and led in a way that will not make trouble on the other side.
And when it comes to me and my experiences with live coding, I must say that I didn't had a proper live coding experience. I had something similar to it, I would say. I remember one of the job interviews which I had for one of the telecom companies around. That was a C++ position, and they wanted me to do a classical flip string in C++, but you shouldn't be using the standard library functions to do it. But you need to write that function, which is going to flip that string on the other end. But that was done using whiteboard coding with a marker. So I had to write this on the whiteboard. Obviously, the catch was there to remember about the null terminator at the end of the string, so that null terminator is not moved at the very beginning, because if it's going to be there, the string is going to be of zero length in the end of the day. I had the other experiences, which were actually trying to like give out your code snippet. So there was a company which hired me mostly based on an example of PHP code which I've developed. So I've sent in the samples of the code, and that was a criterion for them to take me on board. The other thing which I recall is that I had an interview for a project where I was giving a PHP class for code review, but it wasn't like a pull request where you would see a diff or something. It was like a randomly picked class from a project, and I was supposed to say what's wrong about this. So as I was looking at things like the design of the class, whether it's encapsulating things, it doesn't have redundant methods, stuff like that, and I saw okay that class is pretty nicely designed. I would say it seems that it solves the problem, and there's no big problem with this. But the catch there was that there was one of the methods which had a typo in it. So there was a typo in the name, and the other method, it was like a private method having a typo in the name, and the public method calling that method didn't have the typo. So technically that class didn't work. If you would run it through an interpreter, that the class wouldn't work out. So I'm still asking myself, what was the purpose? And we'll get to the purpose of those interviews. But I saw Artur, you raising your hand.
Yeah, I thought that maybe it was a recruitment, for being a linter.
No, actually, this seems to be the case. This seems to be the case. I finally got to to that project because the other questions actually got me through, but that linting problem for my brain, that was something which I totally discarded, because at that time I was already using PHP Storm, so I was just assuming that the IDE is already going to flash this red if you're using a wrong method. So if somebody is going to give me such a class to like be the linter, I don't want to be the linter. I'm here to solve a problem and not check the correctness of the code in terms of like characters, right? So
Grzegorz, you mentioned some example from your past that you were asked to make a live coding on the table. I had something similar. I was asked to do some kind of riddle about the building and dropping eggs. I don't remember the details, so I will try to not to spoil it. But I have been like asked the question like. about the number of moves to accomplish something in this riddle, and it was like, I thought that was the brilliant idea because it was some kind of live coding. Yeah, to answer this question, you had to find in your mind an algorithm how to solve that problem, even though that you didn't write it down. You needed to think about it. I also had the whiteboard for it, so I could like try to note the algorithm for that I made to solve this problem. And yeah, even though it was very difficult, especially for a beginner, I feel like it was like the most brilliant interviews I have ever had. And they're respectful for the guy that is now a worker in Google, that even though he was even younger than me, like 2 years, and he was on studies, it was the most brilliant interview I have ever had in my life. Like the most interesting. Yeah, we spent there like 2 hours to interview in some basement of a single family house, and doing this rather mathematical stuff that was totally different than you could see on as a business average.
I think we are getting to the point where we should or we can think about the data points which the companies want to get by doing different kind of exercises. Yeah, because when I think about recruiting people, that there's like two areas which are the most important, and I don't think about any other to to be honest. So there is like the soft fit, let's call it this way. So like the values or cultural or whatever we will call it, and there is this technical part of the fit of the candidate. Yeah? And while some tasks can be strange from the perspective of the candidate, as we already described, if we look on these challenges, exercises from the company point of view, that can be completely different. Yes, and they can provide good data points to assess the candidate.
So let's spend here a moment. This is a very good question, because that's a question of purpose. Why companies are going into things like live coding, for an instance, right? So perhaps let's start again, Marek, with you. So when you were sometimes considering doing live codings, or were participating in the live codings, how do you think? What kind of answers this does give to the companies?
Okay, I can first move the one step back to the time when I was like being interviewed, and I had different experience of the live coding from the candidate perspective. And I could say that I could see a different approach from the interviewer at some point, because I don't understand why that can be so important to know like crazy deep details of the language specifics sometimes. How is it important for the job when you can really just open the documentation if you really need it and you are not sure about some detail? But on the other interviews, I could see that the interviewer was not really about perfect solution, which is super cool. But they were. I could see that they are more interested, like to see how they can challenge me and how I will tackle this challenge. Yeah. And now, when I'm highly involved in the hiring process, I, I am on this side of the second part of the interviewers, let's say. So when I do the live coding with the candidates, I never look for the like perfect solution. It can even end up without being able to run at all, because there is maybe some stupid error in the code. But I'm more into like seeing how the person is thinking, if he can like describe his thinking process, because this is super critical for the developers, in my opinion, because when you work with someone and you have to like pair up or mob in bigger group, and someone cannot describe what they are thinking, this is challenging to work with this kind of people, because you cannot help them, because you don't really know what they are struggling with. Yeah, so that's one of the like critical thing in the live coding interview to me as the interviewer, like to see how the person is thinking, if they can tell and describe their issues with something, because this is not bad they have the issue, but this is really important to be able to tell and explain the issue they have.
I feel like it's also important to take a look at how the person you are interviewing in his live coding is behaving, if he's or she is self-confident or not, and how with this progression of live coding, this behavior is changing. Or is not, because if you see someone that is doing the live coding confidently, like methodically, following some let's say path, so that he got from experience, describing the next steps that he or she is going to do, will show you that that this guy or girl knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's probably about his experience, about candidate's experience is things in the CV might not be a lie. So it's something that can give you a hint if the candidate is truly the one that he advertised he is, in the CV. So this is also a value, from the HR perspective, I would say. This is like a soft skill. But on the other hand, it's not only a confirmation of skill, but also showing that the candidate has an ability to perform. Maybe not perform, but share knowledge with others. Yeah, for example, to take an opportunity and do the internal code sharing. Yeah, because he's quite fluent with it. He's not afraid of doing so. So this is also some characteristic of a candidate that can be useful in the organization, and it might be difficult to notice in a different way.
So when I'm thinking about the purposes, is that the first thing which comes to my mind is that essentially this is a quite stressful experience, and I mean that it tends to be stressful for some people, for some not. So taking into account that most likely this is a stressful experience, this definitely is going to tell the interviewer how the candidate operates under some stress. I mean, the example which you gave, Artur, with that surprise, that's super disappointing. that's like a super stressful way of running things. I don't believe that was done on purpose. I hope it wasn't done on purpose, because that means these people were evil, and I'm saying this with full confidence.
It was long ago. Today it wasn't that big
the
problem.
the dark times over there. I definitely think that it's not the purpose of such an live coding to verify like syntax knowledge or documentation knowledge. I'm from at least for me, when I did multiple programming languages, it's not possible for us as human beings to recall all the important facts or aspects or quirks or super catches in languages, over engineering stuff. Now, I think that for me, at least when I would be running a live coding interview, that would be okay if somebody's going to open the docs of the language, if not using the ones in the IDE. Really to just have a quicker like a solution to what they are actually doing, right? So for me, the purpose of such a live coding would be also to see how that person is going to tackle the situation in which he or she is blocked. I recall from doing the live coding sessions during our brown bags, and one of the feedbacks which I've got from one of the participants is that it's really nice to see somebody like coding, and not in like a YouTube manner when everything is produced and each and every keystroke is just perfect and nothing is like misaligned. People see you struggling, and people, most importantly, see you getting out of that struggle. And this is something which you, Marek, emphasized, right? So you see how people are tackling the problem, what's the thinking process, and really that's one of the ways you can do it.
Yeah, I feel like Mark also said about the time that is less time consuming, and I feel it's in today's world when time is money, it's very important to get the feedback in some limited amount of time, and the less is better. Of course, if you can maintain some quality level of this information. So let's say that we have a coding session, yeah, with so the what is good about the live coding sessions, that you get the feedback immediately, you get the answers to your questions that will arise immediately, and the candidate, even if he will like get stuck in some point, you as a interviewing person can say, okay, let's follow up, you can overcome it, I understand you got stuck, but let's focus on different things. Otherwise, this candidate might spend like few hours of his time to somehow overcome this problem, and finally even don't get a job. Yeah, so I feel like it's beneficial to both sides, and it's also saying like very good about the company that is valuing some candidates' time. Yeah, that the respect from the employer is also very I feel valuable in this world.
I have like three tips which are coming to my mind as we usually trying to give some tips and tricks to our listeners, which we got from our experience. And they are all connected to what you guys just said, so I have to say them before I will forget them. So the one thing which you, Grzegorz, mentioned about the brown bags and the sort of code sharing, which you have to mention, is that as for candidate, I would say it's the really great training for future recruitment processes to do the live trainings for the team. So when you have to when you have even 5 people from your team or from the company watching you and looking at your screen while you code, you first of all do the great job because you share the knowledge with the team, which is super cool. And the second thing is that when the next time on the interview you will have to do the same, you will feel like plus 10 in terms of power of the coding. If we think about this RPG way. The second thing, as the interviewer, I would say it's super important. It's challenging, and it's challenging to me as interviewer to like help the candidate to relax. Yeah, because as we mentioned, it's super stressful for many people. And we can, while we are doing that remotely, we can easily sometimes see that someone is getting red face, getting really nervous. So it's super cool to like try to even joke about something, like do anything to help person to relax. And the third, it's not maybe the tip, but it's my opinion. What you just, Artur, said about the time, and the time of the feedback. It's that that's why I said that the I value more live coding, even if it's stressful, over the take home, because it's like super fair between the company and the candidate. Because when there is the take home task, the candidate can spend hours on this, and the company can look at for that for, I don't know, 15 minutes. Okay, you are rejected, or you go through. While on the live coding sessions, both parties are spending exactly the same amount of time, which is like the most fair solution possible in terms of the time.
Before we move to the next part, I would just to quickly respond to what you, Marek, said in regards, how much of the work is on the interviewer here. We live at the times where the companies are building up their brands. There's the whole notion of employer branding. And then one of the things which I've took from a lot of interviews which I did in the past is that we as interviewers we should create a pleasant experience for that candidate, because later on, even if they don't pass, they should be able to do like positive marketing. Like I was there, it was a very hard interview. I didn't go through, but I feel kind of encouraged to try again after some time, or I think you should try it as well, because that seems like a good position, right? So if we let the candidates out devastated after a disappointing experience, right, it's not going to play well for the company. That's a total waste of time for everybody. So we always have to be on the lookout to guide the candidate, make a good experience out of it, and also reach the objectives, right? So get the answers which we need from such an interview. I think it's already a good time to start to sum things up a little bit, and I wanted to do it in a way where I would like retrospectively say something about this episode. When I was like thinking about recording this episode and this subject, I wasn't really convinced about the live codings and doing live codings, perhaps due to the fact that the way I was doing them, like quotation marks, or experiencing them, it wasn't like cool for me, and I must admit it's stressful. But as we went through the subject, and you've placed your opinions on this, I actually felt quite convinced in order to try one out, either as a like an interviewer, or perhaps like a candidate at some point, if that's going to be the case. There's one catch which I found as a interviewer in this process. It might not apply to everybody. It might apply only to some people. But there's a warning sign which I would like to put before I pass the microphone further. Is that I think that we as interviewers really have to watch on our ego when we are building the examples or giving out the problems, because I know people who are like super attached to have super sophisticated knowledge about the language, and if you don't know that syntax shortcut, something you won't ever pass, and the whole interview is really about proving their point. We never should be going into this direction. Always have the higher purpose of the exercise in mind. It's not about showing off. because I know that some people can go into that direction. No, it's not about showing off. This is the place where the candidate should shine, and not the interviewer. The interviewer has opportunities in their day-to-day work to have enough shining, and not not to gain some ego boost during candidate's interview. So this is the only catch, which I really find quite probable in some cases, and always be on the lookout to not end up in that corner, because that's not going to help anybody. So retrospectively, Marek, what would you say after today's episode?
Yeah, I can do the retrospective for last 4 years, 5, and I can say that I went through the similar road, and I was hating the live coding for quite a while, and during the time I've like realized that the advantages over the tasks, the take-home ones, for the reasons which we already described during this episode. I recall one thing which you mentioned about the ego, which is super important, and I totally agree with that. And as the company, if we have enough people on board in terms of the recruitment process, it's super good to have sort of parallel interviews. I mean, not happening at the very same time, but I mean like parallel CI jobs where when one fails, it doesn't block the other one, and that's what we do currently at Urbans. This is not like a top secret thing, as candidates know that, and it's really good because sometimes the candidate can like fail because he or she had bad day, they didn't sleep well, or something happened in the personal life, but they will do great on the two others, if there are three, for example, and that's super good because at the end, when you meet together and talk about the results, you see that okay, this one can be like this is the data point which can be removed because it doesn't align with the whole picture. It was a bad measurement, let's say, in this case, and it's really good for both for the candidate and for the company, I believe, because the company doesn't lose the good candidate because of some accident, and also the candidate can can still get the job even if something is happening in the personal life. And as from the company perspective, I can see that like our struggles and our engagement in the improving the process and how we like try to, even if we believe that we have currently fairly good process and we get the good feedback from the candidates, even the one which are rejected, which is really good. Like to I would encourage everyone like to ask the candidates to give the feedback. Did you like it or not? Because you can still improve something. We may be doing something silly which we don't realize, and maybe candidates feel unfair treated or stressed unnecessarily, etc. And I can tell that like when you are the candidate, you can realize that the company is often really struggling to do the good process because it's also challenging. It costs money, as we all know, and we can read quite a few posts on LinkedIn recently, and not only recently, about like the cost, the yearly cost of the hiring and how high it is. Yeah, we should always think about two sides, and when we both will think about two sides, we will all be living in the better world at some point.
And how about you, Artur?
Yeah, so during our conversation, I only assured myself and feeling that live coding is a good tool for making an interview. but I still feel like it's not the good tool for every candidate. So if I had to summarize, I'd say use it, but maybe if you are making interview with some junior for some junior position, then maybe consider some different part of checking the abilities of candidate, because it might be too stressful for juniors that actually start its careers, do not have this expectation in talking, in presenting themselves, like selling themselves to the company. So like underlining their good parts during that interview, trying not to make silly mistakes. So this might be too stressful and leave bad feelings afterwards in this candidate. I also feel like in general, putting an option to choose which way it will go, if it's better to do the live coding, or if it's better for you as a candidate to prepare some code because you would like you have the time that you can spend on, is also a good choice. Especially why I think so, because not every person values the same. Some people have lots of things on their heads already, like kids, like families, other things that they need to do, like construction sites, for example. and then the time is really precious for them, and for us, Marek, of course. And that's what wanted to say. So then it's better for them to do the live coding, but some others might just have a lot of free time because they are not in relationship. They have not that much things to do except for daily work, and maybe then they would like to know, like, spend more time to present themselves better, in front of the interviewer. So I think it's the best is to stay agile, stay open for a candidate, and think about alternatives. Not to go one way and assuming that it's the best way and nothing else is going to work for us. So be open.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Artur. As we all know, there are no silver bullets in IT, and this applies also to like this methodologies of interviewing. And I really like the distinction that depending on the position leveling, let's say, you apply different tools. That's totally fair for everybody. So definitely something to really employ. Now, I'm really curious about our listeners. So, guys, please tell us and let us know, do you like live coding during interviews? Did you really had that experience? What was the best experience you had, or the worst? Because if you give us that feedback, both we and the other listeners can benefit from. And if you would like to help out the show, it would be great if you shared this episode with perhaps somebody who's going to be a candidate in a moment, or perhaps an interviewer at your company, so that they can hear the other perspectives from outside of the company. And we try to convey all of the thoughts we had. We invite you guys to share your thoughts, so that perhaps in the comment section we're going to have a small knowledge base about opinions, ideas, good and bad practices which we all had. So I guess that's all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and see you again and hear you again in 2 weeks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
That's all for today. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Visit our page on Facebook and Twitter, leave us a comment under the episode, subscribe to the updates, and share it with others.
We would like to hear your feedback so that we can prepare more interesting content for you to enjoy. Hear you next time!